everyone, Sarah here. Rewind Justice brings you revenge stories that will blow your mind. If you're ready, hit subscribe and let's go.
The conference room at Henderson and Associates smelled like expensive leather and old money. Mom had rented it specifically for this occasion, what she called the family estate planning discussion. Translation: the public humiliation of Morgan Ellis, the family disappointment. I arrived exactly on time wearing my usual work clothes, simple black pants and a modest blouse. My sister Vanessa swept in 15 minutes late, dripping in designer labels, her engagement ring catching the overhead lights like a disco ball. Sorry, she said, not sounding sorry at all. Traffic from the country club was insane. Mom beamed at her like she'd just cured cancer. Dad pulled out her chair. My two uncles, Uncle Richard and Uncle Tom, nodded approvingly. Aunt Patricia actually applauded. I sat in the corner, my leather portfolio in my lap, and waited. Now that we're all here, Mom began, shooting me a pointed look that said, "You're lucky we even invited you. Your father and I want to discuss our estate planning. We're not getting any younger and we want everything settled clearly." Very clearly, Dad added, his eyes on me. The estate attorney, Mr. Harrison, a man I'd never met, sat at the head of the table with a stack of documents. He looked uncomfortable, like he knew exactly what kind of family drama he'd been hired to facilitate. The Henderson family assets, Mom continued, pulling out a printed list, consist of 8 rental properties across Arizona and Texas, with a combined estimated value of $6.2 million. There's also the primary residence in Scottsdale, valued at $1.8 million, and various investment accounts totaling approximately $2.4 million. Vanessa's eyes sparkled. Uncle Richard leaned forward. "After careful consideration," Dad said, his voice taking on that formal tone he used when he wanted to sound important, "we've decided that Vanessa will inherit everything." The room erupted in congratulations. Aunt Patricia actually stood up to hug Vanessa. Uncle Tom raised his coffee cup in a toast. "Everything?" Vanessa asked, her voice dripping with false modesty. "Mom, Dad, that's so generous, but what about Morgan?" She looked at me with those perfectly innocent eyes, the same eyes she'd used when we were kids and she'd broken my toys, then blamed me for leaving them out. "Morgan has made her choices," Mom said coldly. "She chose to work in that government job instead of joining the family business. She chose to live in that tiny apartment instead of staying close to family. She's chosen independence so she can be independent. Completely independent," Dad added with satisfaction. I nodded quietly. "Understood. You're not going to argue?" Vanessa asked, and I caught the flash of disappointment in her eyes. She'd wanted a fight, wanted to see me beg. "No," I said simply. "If that's your decision, that's your decision." Mr. Harrison cleared his throat. "I should mention that estate plans can always be modified and—" "This won't be modified," Mom interrupted. "We're very clear about this. Vanessa has been responsible, family-oriented, and successful. She deserves everything we've built." "She manages 3 of the rental properties already," Uncle Richard added. "She's proven herself." I thought about those 3 properties, the ones Vanessa supposedly managed. I thought about the forensic accounting report sitting in my office safe, detailing exactly how she'd been managing them. But I said nothing. "Morgan," Dad said, his tone softening in that condescending way that made my skin crawl, "you're 32 years old. You have a stable job. You'll be fine. Your sister has a family to think about, her fiancé, future children. She needs this more than you do." "I understand, Dad." "Good." He seemed almost disappointed by my compliance. "Then we're all in agreement. Mr. Harrison will draw up the papers and we'll have everything formalized by the end of the month." The meeting continued for another 40 minutes. Discussions of trust structures, tax implications, distribution timelines. I sat quietly, occasionally taking notes, watching my family carve up an estate they didn't actually own. As we filed out, Vanessa caught my arm. "No hard feelings, right, sis?" "None at all," I said, smiling politely. "I know you probably think it's unfair," she continued, her voice taking on that syrupy tone she used when she was about to twist the knife. "But Mom and Dad are right. I've been here. I've put in the work. I've managed those properties, dealt with tenants, handled repairs. What have you done? Filed papers at some government office." "You're absolutely right," I said. You've definitely been managing those properties. She blinked, surprised by my agreement. Well, good. I'm glad you understand. I watched her walk away, her designer heels clicking on the marble floor, her phone already out to text her friends about her multi-million-dollar inheritance. I waited until I was in my car before I opened my portfolio. Inside was a manila folder I'd been carrying for 3 years, waiting for the right moment. The label read, Irrevocable Trust Documents, Henderson Estate 2019. I need to go back 5 years to explain how I ended up in that conference room, calmly accepting my disinheritance from an estate I already owned. I was 27, fresh out of graduate school with a degree in public administration, when Grandma Helen got sick. Not sick enough to be incapacitated, but sick enough to start thinking seriously about mortality. Grandma Helen was my father's mother, a sharp-minded woman who'd built the Henderson real estate portfolio from nothing. She'd started with a single rental house in 1962 and slowly, methodically, built an empire. By 2018 she owned 8 properties across 2 states, all paid off, all generating steady income. She was also the only person in my family who'd ever really seen me. You're different from them, she told me one afternoon in her hospital room, during one of her chemotherapy sessions. I'd taken the day off work to sit with her, something no one else in the family had done. They were all too busy. Different how? I asked, helping her adjust her pillow. You think long-term. You plan. You don't just grab for the easy thing. She paused, her hand shaking slightly as she reached for her water. Your sister, your parents, they think wealth is about spending. They don't understand it's about building. Grandma. Let me finish. Her voice was weak but firm. I've been watching this family for years. Your father thinks he built what we have. He didn't. I did. And I've watched him and your mother slowly chip away at it with their lifestyle, their image. Your sister is even worse. I didn't argue. We both knew it was true. I'm leaving you everything, she said simply. Grandma, you can't. I can and I will. But we're going to do it smart. She pulled out a folder from her nightstand. I've already talked to my attorney. We're setting up an irrevocable trust. All 8 properties transferred to you immediately. They'll continue generating income which will pay for my care, and when I'm gone, you'll have full control. Mom and Dad will. They'll never know, she interrupted. Not until I'm gone at least. And by then it won't matter. The properties will be yours legally, completely, irrevocably. They can't contest it, they can't change it, they can't touch it. Why me? She smiled, that knowing smile that had always made me feel seen. Because you're the only one who won't squander it. Because you understand what it took to build this. And because you're the only one who visits an old lady during her chemo treatments. Over the next 3 months, Grandma Helen and I worked with her attorney Marcus Chin to structure everything perfectly. 8 quitclaim deeds, all transferring title from Helen Henderson to Morgan Ellis. An irrevocable trust that couldn't be challenged or modified. Property management agreements that kept everything running smoothly while appearing unchanged to my family. Your grandmother is very thorough, Marcus told me during one of our meetings. These documents are bulletproof. She's worried about my family contesting everything, I explained. They won't have grounds, he assured me. Everything is properly documented, properly filed, properly executed. As of right now, you own all 8 properties free and clear. Grandma Helen died 6 months later, in November 2019. The funeral was elaborate. My family made sure of that. They wanted everyone to see how devoted they were to the family matriarch. I was the only one who knew that the family matriarch had cut them all out completely. After Grandma's death, I became a ghost owner. The properties continued operating exactly as they had before. Same property management company, same maintenance schedules, same everything. The only difference was that all the income now flowed into accounts controlled by me. My family assumed everything was tied up in Grandma's estate, going through probate. They didn't ask questions because they assumed they'd inherit eventually. Meanwhile, I did what Grandma had taught me. I built. The 8 properties generated approximately $18,000 per month in rental income. That's $216,000 per year, pure profit after expenses and property management fees. I didn't touch it. Instead, I invested it, diversified it, grew it. I worked my boring government job. Actually a senior analyst position with the Department of Housing and Urban Development, making $95,000 a year. I lived in my tiny apartment, a modest one-bedroom that cost $1,200 a month. I drove my old car, a paid-off 2015 Honda Civic. And I watched my family spend money they thought they'd inherit. Vanessa was the worst. In 2020, she'd convinced Mom and Dad to let her manage 3 of the properties. She had no idea I was the actual owner, receiving copies of every financial statement, every maintenance report, every tenant communication. She was stealing approximately $2,800 per month by keeping rental income that should have been deposited into the estate accounts. Over 3 years, that was more than $100,000 in embezzlement. I documented everything. Every missing deposit, every falsified expense report, every fraudulent maintenance claim. I hired a forensic accountant, quietly, privately, to build an ironclad case. Not because I planned to prosecute her. Because I knew eventually, there would be a moment like the one in that conference room and I'd need leverage. My job at HUD wasn't just boring paperwork either. I'd worked my way up to a senior policy position, advising on federal housing programs worth billions. I'd been featured in Government Executive magazine. I'd testified before Congress twice. My family never asked about my work. They assumed I shuffled papers. By 2024, the Henderson estate, my estate, had grown to $6.2 million in property value. The income I'd been reinvesting had created an additional $400,000 investment portfolio. I owned 8 rental properties free and clear, and I had enough liquid assets to weather any storm. And my family had no idea. I left the family meeting on a Thursday afternoon. I had until Monday to decide my next move. Part of me, the part that still remembered being loved as a child before I became the disappointment, wanted to let it go. To just walk away, let them have their delusions, live my quiet life as the secret millionaire they'd dismissed. But then I thought about Grandma Helen sitting in that hospital room trusting me with her legacy. Don't let them squander it, she'd said. Don't let them think they can treat people however they want without consequences. Friday morning I called Marcus Chin. Morgan, he said warmly. I was wondering when I'd hear from you. Your mother's attorney contacted me last week about the Henderson estate. What did you tell him? That he should speak with the actual property owner. You. I smiled. I need you to do something for me. Name it. File the irrevocable trust documents with the county recorder's office. All 8 properties. Make sure everything is publicly searchable. Then prepare a full disclosure package for my parents' attorney. You're sure about this? I'm sure. It's going to create quite a situation. I know. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Your grandmother would be proud. Let's hope so. We spent the next 2 hours on the phone, reviewing every document, every filing, every possible legal challenge. Marcus was thorough. It's why Grandma had chosen him. I'll have everything filed by Monday morning, he said. The county recorder will update their records, and anyone searching those property addresses will see Morgan Ellis as the owner of record, with transfer dates of 2019. Perfect. And Morgan, your family's estate attorney, Mr. Harrison, he's going to be very uncomfortable when he realizes what's happened. Good, I said. He should be. Saturday and Sunday were quiet. I didn't hear from my family. They were too busy celebrating Vanessa's windfall. I saw the Instagram posts, champagne brunches, shopping trips, Vanessa trying on jewelry for the inheritance money. I spent the weekend organizing my documentation, the forensic accounting report on Vanessa's embezzlement, the property management statements, the trust documents, the quit-claim deeds. Everything was in order. Monday morning Marcus filed the documents. By noon they were public record. By 2 p.m. my phone rang. Miss Ellis, this is Gerald Harrison. We met on Thursday at your parents' estate planning meeting. Hello, Mr. Harrison. His voice was strained. I've just been contacted by the county recorder's office regarding some irregularities with the Henderson properties. Irregularities. The properties your parents were planning to leave to your sister. The recorder's office shows you as the owner of record. As of 2019. That's correct. Silence. Then, Ms. Ellis, did you know about this during our meeting on Thursday? Yes. More silence. I could almost hear him calculating the ethical implications, the malpractice exposure, the complete disaster his clients had walked into. I need to request an emergency conference, he said finally. With you, with your parents, with my client's full family. Can you come to my office tomorrow at 10 a.m.? I'll be there. And Ms. Ellis? I'm going to strongly recommend that your family retain separate counsel. That's probably wise, Mr. Harrison. After I hung up, I texted Marcus. They know. Meeting tomorrow at 10. His response came immediately. I'll be there. This is going to be interesting. That evening my phone exploded. 17 calls from my mother. 12 from my father. 8 from Vanessa. 6 from Uncle Richard. I didn't answer any of them. Instead, I sent a single group text. See you tomorrow at Mr. Harrison's office. We'll discuss everything then. Mom's response was immediate. Morgan, call me right now. Dad's, this is some kind of mistake and you need to fix it. Vanessa's, what the hell did you do? I turned off my phone and went to bed early. Tomorrow was going to be a long day. The conference room at Henderson and Associates was packed. Mom and Dad sat on one side of the table, Vanessa next to them. Uncle Richard and Uncle Tom flanked them like bodyguards. Aunt Patricia sat in the corner looking confused. I sat on the opposite side with Marcus Chin. Between us was a stack of documents 6 inches high. Mr. Harrison looked like he hadn't slept. Thank you all for coming on such short notice. We have a situation that needs to be addressed. This is ridiculous, Dad interrupted. Some computer error at the county recorder's office, and we all have to drop everything. It's not a computer error, Mr. Henderson, Marcus said calmly. The records are accurate. Your daughter Morgan is the legal owner of all 8 properties commonly referred to as the Henderson estate. The room erupted. That's impossible. Mom shouted. She can't own them, they're Mom's properties. Dad added. Vanessa just stared at me, her face white. Marcus opened the first folder. In March of 2019, Helen Henderson executed 8 quit-claim deeds, transferring full ownership of the following properties to Morgan Ellis. He began reading addresses. 2847 Saguaro Drive, Phoenix. 1523 Desert Bloom Court, Scottsdale. 4456 Copper Ridge Lane, Tucson. She couldn't do that. Mom interrupted. She was sick, she wasn't in her right mind. Mrs. Henderson, Marcus said patiently, your mother-in-law was examined by 2 independent physicians as part of the transfer process. Both certified she was of sound mind and fully competent to make legal decisions. We have their affidavits right here. He slid the documents across the table. Dad grabbed them, his hands shaking. This can't be legal, Uncle Richard said. There are laws about this kind of thing, inheritance laws. These weren't inheritances, Marcus explained. These were gifts, properly executed and recorded. Helen Henderson had every legal right to transfer her property to anyone she chose during her lifetime. But why? Mom asked, and for the first time I heard genuine pain in her voice. Why would she do this? Why would she cut out her own son? Everyone turned to look at me. I opened my own folder. Because she knew what you'd do with them. What's that supposed to mean? Dad demanded. It means she spent 40 years building this portfolio, and she didn't want to see it destroyed in a decade of poor management and excessive spending. How dare you, Mom hissed. Let me show you something. I pulled out the first property statement. This is 2847 Saguaro Drive. Rental income, $2,200 per month. According to the property management company's records, this property has generated that income consistently for 3 years. So, Vanessa said. So according to the estate accounts you've been managing, this property has only generated $1,200 per month for the past 3 years. Silence. Where did the other $1,000 per month go? I asked. Vanessa's face went from white to red. There were expenses, repairs. I have the repair records right here. I slid another document across the table. Actual expenses, $3,400 in 3 years. You reported $18,000 in expenses to the estate accounts. I don't have to listen to this, Vanessa said, standing up. Sit down, Dad commanded, his voice sharp. She sat. I pulled out another statement. 1523 Desert Bloom Court. Actual income, $2,400 per month. Reported income, $1,300. Actual expenses, $2,800 over 3 years. Reported expenses, $22,000. This is a witch hunt, Uncle Richard said. This is embezzlement, I replied calmly. Over 3 years, Vanessa has diverted approximately $108,000 from properties she was supposedly managing on behalf of the estate. Allegedly managing, Marcus corrected. She was actually managing properties owned by my client, without my client's permission, while stealing rental income. Mr. Harrison put his head in his hands. This is insane. Vanessa shouted. You're making this up. You're just jealous because Mom and Dad chose me. They chose you to inherit an estate they don't own, I interrupted. That's not really much of a choice. Mom looked at the documents spread across the table, then at me. You knew. At the meeting on Thursday. You sat there and let us plan everything knowing it was all a lie. Not a lie, I said. You told me your plans for your estate. I didn't say anything about mine. This is your fault, Dad said, his voice cold. You manipulated your grandmother, took advantage of a sick old woman. Mr. Henderson, Marcus interrupted, I'm going to stop you right there. I was Helen Henderson's attorney for 35 years. She was one of the sharpest people I've ever known, right up until the day she died. She made this decision completely on her own. Your daughter didn't manipulate anyone. Then why? Mom asked again. Why would she do this to us? I pulled out the last document in my folder. A handwritten letter, dated March 2019. She left this for me to be shared when the time was right. I began reading. To my son and his family, I have transferred my properties to Morgan because she is the only one who understands what it took to build them. She understands sacrifice, planning, and long-term thinking. I have watched my son and his wife spend money they haven't earned yet, living beyond their means, making poor decisions. I have watched Vanessa follow the same path. I will not let 50 years of work be squandered in 10 years of poor management. Morgan will honor what I built. The rest of you will have to build your own legacy. The room was silent. That's not fair, Vanessa whispered. Fair? I asked. You've been stealing rental income for 3 years. You've spent money that was never yours. You've paraded around town spending an inheritance you thought you'd get, and now you're upset about fair. We're your family, Mom said. How could you do this to your own family? I sat in that conference room on Thursday and listened to you disinherit me without a second thought. I watched you smirk and celebrate and plan. And now you're asking how I could do this to you. Dad stood up. We're contesting this. All of it. We'll sue, we'll fight this until. On what grounds? Marcus asked. Your mother was competent. The transfers were legal. The documents are properly executed and recorded. You have no case. We'll find something, Uncle Richard said. You can try, I said. But while you're spending money on lawyers, you should know something else. I've already contacted the district attorney's office about Vanessa's embezzlement. The forensic accounting report is very thorough. Vanessa started crying. Real tears this time, not the performative kind she usually deployed. And one more thing, I added. The Scottsdale house, your primary residence. The one valued at $1.8 million. What about it? Dad asked warily. Check your property deed. Grandma transferred that to me too in 2019. You've been living in my house for 5 years. The color drained from Dad's face. I've been patient, I continued. I've charged no rent, made no demands. I let you live there because you're my parents. But that patience has limits. You wouldn't, Mom said. Try me. Mr. Harrison cleared his throat. I think we need to pause this meeting. Everyone needs to consult with their own attorneys. This has become complicated. It's very simple, I said, standing up. I own the Henderson estate. All of it. I have for 5 years. You can accept that and move forward, or you can fight it and lose. Either way, the outcome doesn't change. I gathered my documents. Marcus did the same. Morgan, Dad said, and his voice cracked. Please. We can work something out. We're family. I stopped at the door. You're right. We are family. That's why I'm not having Vanessa arrested today. That's why I'm giving you 6 months to find somewhere else to live before I sell the Scottsdale house. That's why I'm still talking to you at all. 6 months. Mom gasped. 6 months. After the way you treated me on Thursday, you're lucky it's not 6 days. I walked out. Marcus followed. In the elevator he let out a low whistle. That was intense. That was necessary, I corrected. What now? Now we wait. They'll scramble, they'll consult attorneys, they'll look for loopholes. And they'll find exactly what we already know. There aren't any. And Vanessa's embezzlement? I'll give her 30 days to return the full amount. If she does, I won't press charges. If she doesn't. I shrugged. That's her choice. Marcus smiled. Your grandmother trained you well. She did. The next 3 weeks were chaos. My family hired attorney after attorney. Each one reviewed the documents and told them the same thing. The transfers were legal, binding, and uncontestable. Uncle Richard tried to claim Grandma had been unduly influenced. The 2 physicians' affidavits destroyed that argument. Uncle Tom suggested proving I'd forged the documents. The county recorder's official stamps and witnesses demolished that theory. Dad attempted to argue that Grandma had promised him the properties verbally. Verbal promises don't override legal deeds. Mom tried emotional manipulation, calling me at work. How can you do this to your own mother? How did you disinherit me without a second thought? I asked. She hung up. Vanessa was the most interesting. She showed up at my apartment, my tiny apartment, on a Tuesday evening 2 weeks after the conference. Can we talk? She asked. I let her in. She sat on my couch, looking around at my modest furniture, my minimal decorations. I always thought you lived here because you couldn't afford better. I live here because I don't need better. The money I took from the properties, she said quietly. I didn't think it mattered. I thought they were just estate properties that no one would notice. I noticed. I can't pay it all back. I've already spent most of it. Then you have 2 choices. Set up a payment plan and pay it back over time, or face criminal charges for embezzlement. She started crying again. I'm getting married in 6 months. A criminal record will destroy everything. You should have thought about that before you stole $108,000. Please, Morgan. We're sisters. You knew we were sisters when you stood up at that meeting and celebrated getting everything while I got nothing. She looked at me and I saw something I'd never seen before. Genuine fear. What do you want from me? I want the money back. I want a written confession of the embezzlement. And I want you to understand that actions have consequences. And if I do all that, then I won't press charges. You'll pay me back at $2,000 per month until the full amount is returned with 5% interest. You'll sign a document admitting to the theft. And you'll never speak to me about this inheritance again. That's it. That's more generous than you deserve. She left 20 minutes later, a payment plan agreement and confession letter signed. I watched her drive away in her luxury SUV, purchased no doubt with stolen rental income. Mom and Dad were harder. They fought, they argued, they hired lawyers. But eventually reality set in. The Scottsdale house was mine. The rental properties were mine. The estate they'd planned to leave Vanessa didn't exist. 4 months after the conference, Dad called me. We found a condo, he said. In Tempe. 2 bedrooms. We can be out in 30 days. Good. Morgan, He paused. I was wrong. About a lot of things. Yes, you were. Can you forgive us? I thought about that question. I thought about the little girl who'd never been good enough, the teenager who'd been compared unfavorably to her perfect sister, the adult who'd been dismissed as a failure. I don't know, Dad. Ask me in a few years. Fair enough. They moved out 6 weeks later. I sold the Scottsdale house for $1.9 million and invested the proceeds. It's been 8 months since that family meeting. Vanessa is making her payments, on time every month. She got married last month. I wasn't invited. I didn't expect to be. Mom and Dad are adjusting to their new life, their reduced circumstances. They're learning what it means to live within their means. Uncle Richard and Uncle Tom don't speak to me. Aunt Patricia sends occasional texts. Nothing substantial, just checking in. I appreciate her more than she knows. My boring government job continues. I was promoted last month to Director of Policy Analysis. Came with a $15,000 raise and an office with a window. The Henderson estate, my estate, is now worth $6.8 million. The rental income continues flowing, continues growing. I'm looking at acquiring 2 more properties next year. I still live in my tiny apartment. I still drive my old car. And I'm okay with that. Because here's what my family never understood. Wealth isn't about what you spend. It's about what you build. It's about having options, having security, having the freedom to live life on your own terms. Grandma Helen understood that. She spent her whole life building something that would last. And now it's my turn to build. Last week I was going through Grandma's papers, things Marcus had saved for me, and I found another letter. Dear Morgan, it read. If you're reading this, then the truth has come out. I'm sure it wasn't easy. Your father is stubborn, your mother is proud, and your sister is spoiled. But you're strong. You're a builder like me. Don't let them make you feel guilty for protecting what we built together. You earned this. Every property, every dollar, every decision. You earned it by being the person they should have been. Build something beautiful. Build something that lasts. And remember, the best revenge is a life well lived. Love, Grandma Helen. I folded the letter carefully and put it in my safe, next to the trust documents and property deeds. Then I opened my laptop and started reviewing investment opportunities. I have an empire to build.